Today I'm here with Rebecca Swiss. She is a beautiful mother of 2 young children. She also has a large social media presence as well, and she's very happy and fun. But as with most of us, there's a side that a lot of people might not know, right?
Right.
And this is one thing that I love about you is that you're willing to be vulnerable and you're willing to help others and putting yourself at risk to do that. So I really appreciate you being here to do that.
Thank you.
Do you mind kind of sharing with us some of the things that you've been through? Start by telling me what you've been through, and then I want to talk about how you got through these things, because I know that there's a lot of us who have been through similar things who need to hear this.
Yeah. So growing up, I'm from Brazil, born there. And then when I was about 4 years old, my family moved to Utah. My dad went to BYU, and we actually moved a lot throughout my childhood years. And so what I remember most is growing up in Florida.
Oh, wow.
And during that time, we had lots of moments where my mom would just like leave to Brazil, and I never really understood why, but like for a long period of time.
How long?
I don't remember because I was so little at the time.
Felt long.
It felt long, yeah. Like when we were in Maryland, I know my grandpa passed away, and she left for me as a child, it felt like a long time. And so we had the experience of being in different babysitters' houses, just like uncomfortable situations.
Yeah, yeah.
But at home, I felt like it was normal to me at the time, but now looking back as an adult, looking back at my childhood, I realized that what I went through, some like physical abuse, emotional abuse, even mental abuse, like all of that, it wasn't normal for...
Was it at the hands of babysitters?
No, it was at the hands of my parents.
Oh.
And they kind of would
So
leave us
sorry.
with babysitters, and I don't know if they knew, like nothing weird actually happened at the babysitters, but it was less about the babysitters and more the fact that they just kind of left us to other people's hands when they weren't there, if that makes sense. And
Yeah.
so like, for example, in the summers, they'd ship my brothers off to Utah, and sometimes I'd be shipped off as well. And we'd spend all summer, like the full, I don't know if it's 2 or 3 months of summer, we'd spend at my aunt's house, and my mom would go to Brazil, or I don't know what she would do. Sometimes she would take me to Brazil with her and ship my brothers off to Utah. But it was very weird now thinking about my childhood and realizing those are things that I thought were normal. Being hit all the time was normal. Being told you're a terrible human, that you're like should be ashamed to be who you are, I thought that was normal. And being exposed to other people's lives ever since leaving the house I was raised in, or the condition I was raised in, made me realize that's not normal.
No.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that makes me so... Oh, like I just started feeling emotional hearing this. I can't imagine a little child being told those things.
Yeah, it mostly got really bad. So I was hit a lot when I was younger, but as I grew up, like about 15 years old, I moved to my aunt's house. They kind of shipped me off to Utah. She lived in Spanish Fork, so I didn't know I was moving. They shipped me off to Spanish Fork in the summer, and I thought I was going for vacation, and I never went back to Florida. She started enrolling me into school, and I was just like a very angry teenager because I never got to say goodbye to any of my friends, never saw my room again. Till this day, I've never seen like my stuff. So that safe haven that was there as a child,
Supposed to be there.
Yeah, just disappeared. And it was hard because I was very angry, and I thought that the situation that I had was a good situation, but it wasn't. And now I felt very abandoned by my family.
Of course.
So, and then my senior year, I did my junior year of high school in Spanish Fork. Senior year, my parents moved back, and we lived in a little townhouse. And that, I would say, when I was a little older, like it was bad when I was little, but when I was a little older, it got really bad.
So let me back up a little bit. Okay, so you were shipped off to your aunt's house.
Yeah.
And then how long until you saw your parents?
So when I was shipped off at 15 years old, there were about 9 months where the four of us, my dad, my two brothers, and me, lived in my aunt's one of her bedrooms in her house. She basically took us in because my dad lost his job, which is why we were shipped from Florida anyways. And I didn't know that, but that's just what happened. So my mom left to Brazil. I don't know. She was gone for 9 months. I couldn't call her. I couldn't talk to her. She just disappeared, and I'd hear from her randomly. And at that time, like as a teenager, you really need your mom.
Yeah.
You know?
At every time.
Every time you need your mom. And I felt really, really, really hurt.
And were you the only girl? Mm-hmm. Oh, that makes it even harder. Sure.
Yeah. But the conditions that I grew up in didn't change because I was at my aunt's house. They still, anyways, like it was just hard. And then,
sorry, I don't mean to keep interrupting you, but like
fine.
when you say the conditions, so now it's your dad and your brothers and you, and were you being abused by your dad still at your aunt's house?
It was more like if I misbehaved, I'd get spanked. And they'd hit me where no one could see, and it was fine because it was under the category of being spanked. And I was told as a child to never talk to anyone about it, to never say anything to anyone. Because
was it actually spanking though?
Not in my opinion. Now being a mother, looking back, you don't hit a child ever. Like,
right, 100%.
There's a spanking when they're a toddler where you just kind of tap them and be like, that is unacceptable. Like, you can't hurt yourself, you can't hurt your body, like you can't bite other kids or like. But after I say at a certain age where you can talk to them, you need to talk to them, to the kids. You need to treat them like humans, not your property.
I actually think that you should always be that way. If I can insert my personal opinion, I've never spanked. I have 6 kids, and a couple of them have a lot of energy. But like most of the time when I talk to my friends who spank, they'll admit that when I've spanked my kids, it's when I was angry at them, and it was a way to get your own aggression out. I'm not judging anyone who spanks. I've received judgment from people for not spanking my kids, but there are so many studies that show it has nothing but negative effects. Why?
I agree.
Why hit your child to teach them to not hit?
It told me
it's just dumb.
As a child that I'm not loved.
That's so sad.
And so I tried to parent differently. But for me, it was normal, you know?
But even as a teenager?
Oh, yeah, until I got married.
You were still being hit?
Yeah.
Okay, tell me about that, because, like, was it just your dad, or was your dad and your brothers? Was it your...
It was my mom and my dad.
Okay, so when your mom came back...
My brothers were not involved in really... I hoped they weren't getting spanked, hit, whatever. Because I told my parents when I was young, I was like, if you keep doing this to them, they're not going to want to be around you because you're ruining me right now. So don't do this to them. And so I don't know. And when I was a senior year in high school, they moved to Brazil. And for about, I can't remember exactly, but I would guess maybe under 10 years, but like many, many years, they were living in Brazil. And so I didn't necessarily, like my youngest brother is 8 years younger than me. We're all 4 years apart. Wow. So I didn't grow up having a relationship with them. And so when they were growing up, it was like our childhood were so separated. So I don't know exactly what happened in their lives. But my middle brother actually turned to me as an adult, as we're parents right now, and recently mentioned to me, and he's like, listen, the stuff I witnessed you going through, I feel like I need to go to therapy for that. And I said, I'm sorry you had to witness it, but could you just imagine having to go through it yourself?
What, if you don't mind talking about this, what's one of the worst scenarios that you experienced?
So when in that time period, when they came back to Spanish Fork my senior year of high school, my dad traveled a lot, and my mom would take a lot of her anger out on me. And I was very busy at the time. I was in drill team, and so I had early morning practice in the morning, and then I went to school, and then I had practice after school, and then I had maybe an hour of a break, and then I'd go to my dance studio and teach, and then take class, and then come home and do homework. In that hour of a break, which I taught all those years, didn't see a penny. They would take my money, and if they were using it to pay for my dancing, they could have at least told me. It could have at least been part of my decision, but it wasn't. They just took it. So that was hard for me because I was never able to build something for myself. like save money or
Despite
anything.
working hard, yeah.
Right. And anyway, so in that hour break of my day, this is one of the times that I ran away from home. Sorry, it's hard for me to talk because I feel bad for this little girl that went through this.
Oh gosh.
And so my mom got mad at me because I didn't do the dishes when she asked me to do it. And I was exhausted because I just had drill team in the morning, school and drill, and then I was taking a break before I go to the studio. And she just freaked out, like lost it on me. And at the time we shared our own like earrings, jewelry. It was in her bathroom. And I didn't have much in that house. I had my mattress was just on the floor. All my stuff, I don't know where it went after Florida, but I just had what I had at the time in that little room. And she was yelling and hitting me, and I was a grown woman. I was trying to walk away, and she would take her jewelry, our jewelry, and like throw it down the toilet. And I kind of, at the time, I was just kind of like, that's your jewelry too. Like, you're doing this to yourself. Yeah. I was kind of having an attitude. But I knew this wasn't going to go well, so I went into my room and I got my phone, my first cell phone at the time, and just kind of pushed through her hitting me. And then when I was going down the stairs, we lived in a townhouse, she grabbed my hair and like wrapped it around like this and like pulled it. And so she's at the top of the stairs and I'm going down, and I just pulled with all my might. I didn't care if all my hair came out, and I just ran out of the house. And for about like, I didn't have anything. I didn't have shoes. It was winter. I just had my phone. At least I was like thinking ahead to grab my phone. And so I called my friend at the time, and she let me stay at her house and borrow her clothes. And I still went to school like a responsible little girl, still did everything, but didn't like let my mom know where I was. And then eventually when my aunt like kept calling and was freaking out, I let her know where I was and eventually came home. But that was a very normal day in my life. And I'd constantly be told that I am a terrible person, that I'm just a bad person. And, that kind of stuff gets to you. You start believing it.
Well, especially when it's your parents telling you that.
Yeah.
So did your dad witness your mom doing that?
He'd also do it for her when he's home.
So when you say you were hit until you were married, or spanked or whatever, like, I mean, are they like punching you? I mean, I don't want to, sorry, I'm not trying to go down this rabbit hole of details.
Not punching. It would be more like hit, And as I got older, it got higher. Never my face.
Yeah.
Because it never could, like, if they left anything, it couldn't be seen, There was never a bruise. But the last incident was when I was engaged. And I remember my mom made this bouquet for me that wasn't the style of what I wanted it for my wedding. So at the time, I haven't been in their lives for years.
Okay, so by the time you're engaged, you hadn't even spoken to them?
I've spoken to them, like I've gone home during Christmas time to Brazil.
Oh, because they were back in Brazil.
They were back in Brazil during the time I was in college.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm jumping all over the place.
No, you're fine.
So that was high school, the hair pull incident. And then they left to Brazil. And they lived there, and I went to the University of Utah. And then when I met Dan, and then we were engaged, they came back. They moved back to Utah.
Okay.
And so at this time, they didn't really care to be in my life while they were in Brazil. It was like, if I don't see you, you don't exist kind of thing. There were many times that I worked 4 jobs during the summer, and I was really busy with school, and there were times where I'd call and be like, hey, can I have $20 for gas for my car so I can go to work? And they'd say, we don't have it. And I was living off of like 1 meal a day, usually ramen noodles, and just water the rest of the day. I was like disappearing. And my I had 2 aunts that live here, and they both got really concerned with me. And the one that I lived with in Spanish Fork, she brought food over to my apartment one time because I was starving. And my parents wouldn't send me any money to help me out. Came back, and my mom wanted to suddenly be a part of my life, be part of the wedding. So she made this bouquet, And I politely declined. And I was like, this isn't what I'm envisioning for my wedding, but thank you. Like, it's just not what I'm envisioning. And she freaked out and went to my dad. And so he came down. We were in the basement of my aunt's house, and he was yelling at me and was about to hit me, saying that I'm ungrateful, that I don't treat them like family. And I just turned to him and I was like, you're not my family. I haven't had you be my family for a really long time. I had to start emotionally detaching myself because the pain of seeing these people who are supposed to love you no matter what, being the people who are destroying you, I couldn't handle it. So I detached myself from them mentally. And so that made them furious. And so he came down into my aunt's basement yelling at me and was about to hit me, and my brother caught his hand.
Oh, wow.
And I turned to him and I said, you don't even know if I was pregnant or not, and you are about to hit me. You will never hit me again. You are not invited to my wedding. So I disinvited them to my wedding and didn't speak to them for like 2 years. No, it was 3 years. And in that time, I just wanted to be left alone. And my mom basically told everyone that I was a terrible person. I got hate mail on my honeymoon from her friends. And those people, I'm like, you're a grown woman attacking a just married young girl. Like, whoever, I know who you are, and that person, those people need to be ashamed for doing that to a young girl that just got married.
So I know your husband, Dan. When he married you, did he know how you had been raised and been treated?
Yes.
And did he know that while you guys were engaged, your dad almost hit you?
Yeah.
Because Dan's a good guy. Like, I know he would not put up with that for a second.
No. He put it, yes, but it never happened when Dan's there.
Yeah.
It would never.
Well, of course not, yeah.
They act perfectly when he's there. And so but he has witnessed them lie in front of him when he knows it's not true. Or my mom's a narcissist. She makes things up. She makes her whole world make sense to her, but it's not what the reality is. And my dad has to go along with it. And yes, he has a choice, but like, I don't feel like he really does, maybe, but he's also making a choice to be the way that he is.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
And so they didn't come to my wedding, and everyone I guess they think that I would like regret it, but honestly, I don't.
So what repercussions has the years of that abuse, verbal, physical, whatever, had on you as an adult?
It's been very hard to get through. I've had nightmares of being put back into my childhood. I feel a lot like I'm in a glass box, banging and yelling, and people don't hear me because I would say things to people, but they wouldn't believe me because my parents are really convincing people.
So what's your relationship like now? Do you see them? Do you talk to them?
No. Every time I have an interaction with them, I've tried to have interactions with them now and tried to have a future with them to see if maybe like time can heal wounds and we can have a better future together. But I realized this past January that it's never going to change and it's never going to happen because the brainwashing that my mom has done on my own family members and like the people around them, it's not going to just disappear. And
Right.
They don't like who I am. And I had that realization in January. And I've always had very, very poor self-esteem about myself. I've very much thought very low about myself my whole life because it's what they told me. So,
which is so sad to me because like you're this vivacious, beautiful, kind person that just breaks my heart to even hear that. Yes. Have you ever felt suicidal because of that?
Yeah, a few times. But I would say the strongest one was this past January.
Do you mind telling me about that? Because I know that's when I had messaged you.
Yes.
Because I felt like such a bad friend. Like, how did I not know this? I mean, not that that's something you go around telling
No,
people,
and I
but
hide it. I don't, Dan didn't even know how deep it was. Because there's one thing when you think people have wronged you, but maybe they'll change. Maybe like if you're just a better person, maybe if you can be a little better, like the future can be better for you. That's how I thought. That maybe if I can show them that I've changed and I'm a better person, that they'll like me, they'll like who I am. And after January, so we went, the last encounter I had with them was this past Christmas. I went and spent Christmas with them, and I planned, it was my idea. I wanted to try to get the whole family together to see if there was a chance, to see how the dynamic would be. Nothing happened there, but afterwards I had this very strong feeling to start sharing my childhood, my past, more publicly, because I've always kind of hidden it. And when I started to do that, my brother attacked me on social media, the youngest one. That caught my dad's hand when he was about to hit me, same one. And it was hard because he laughed at me and said, "No, Becca, our parents aren't like that. Like, I know how our mom is, so I kind of have an idea of how you are." He judged me right off the bat. And it hit me so, so hard because her and I are black and white difference. Like, we're very, very different from each other. And that's, after that phone call, I realized there is no change, that nothing I can do, there's nothing that's going to happen in the future to change. And they just don't like who I am. Like, to the core, I can't do anything about it. They don't like who I am. And that's when I became like probably that was when my deepest depression hit in, and I became the strongest part of not wanting to live anymore.
and you didn't say anything to your husband about?
I told him about the phone call. I cried a lot. He travels a lot, and I've been needing to, he's traveled a lot our whole lives, our whole relationship. And he's just such a positive guy, and he's been working so hard on our businesses and our family and everything, that I would tell him, but I don't think I told him everything.
Like, this is serious. I actually need your attention.
Right. And so I don't think he realized I was going through a hard time, but I don't think he realized like how hard it was.
So did you attempt suicide?
No, I
I'm
didn't.
so glad.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I know that these are such personal questions. I'm so
yeah.
sorry. Like, it's so hard to even ask that, but so what has changed between January and now that has helped you to become more stable?
So I have always known that no one can fix my problems. No one can make me happy or fix anything that I'm struggling through, not even Dan. So I joined a leadership group, and we went on a retreat. And I think it was in February or March. I don't remember the exact time. But in that retreat, we did a lot of therapy work. And I've never been able to let go of my past trauma on my own. And I've tried to work on my self-love. I've tried to that's kind of what I share on social media. Like, just be true to who you are, be authentic. Don't try to fake it, and just be real and love the realness and love who you are, love your imperfections. But there's a certain thing wherein it's really deep and mentally where you just can't get rid of. And so in these therapy sessions, we did breath work, and it was life-changing for me. In the whole weekend of this retreat, we talked about forgiveness. And in my head, I had a really hard time forgiving, because in my head, I think of forgiving as the same as forgetting. And I can't ever forget and pretend like it never happened.
Right.
In a sense, I held on to the memory so I wouldn't keep going back to them. And so I'd remember the pain and not go back to them. So I'm like, well, if I forget, then I'll end up going back. Like, you know what I mean? It's like the one thing I was holding on to, but it wasn't serving me any good. And I wanted to let that go. I wanted to be free of it.
So you definitely think that therapy is very helpful.
Very.
Very. What sort of signs can we recognize? Like, I'm looking back at you as this beautiful little girl who's suffering. And, I see kids all the time because I've got so many kids that are all in school. And I always look around and I think, gosh, I don't know what that little kid's life is like at home, and I just want to scoop these kids up in my arms. But what can we do to recognize a child who's suffering?
Just talk to them and give them space. If they don't want to talk, hug them. Like my son, he's 8, and boys don't voice their feelings very much. And I can sense that he's transitioning into
Too cool to share feelings.
yes,
Yeah.
like I know I'm fine, And so I'm like, okay, then let's not talk. What show do you want to watch? And I'll just sit there and just be like, here, like just lay down. Let's just watch a show. And I give him time, and I just show him that I'm always there. And there's times where I'll be like, you know what? Do you want to cry right now? Like, it's okay to cry. It's okay to be sad. I talk him through his feelings to let him know that it's okay to feel what he's feeling. And I think with having kids in general, they're going to grow up and have their own lives, and you're not going to know everything about them.
Right.
And I think that's one of my biggest fears, is not knowing everything about them. But at least deep down, I can know that if I give them the space to share and to know that they're loved no matter what, that's all I needed as a child.
Yeah.
I just needed someone to come home to that wasn't going to hurt me. I wanted someone to love me even when I didn't want to do what they told me to do. I wanted them to love me, who I am as a person. And I didn't have that. And so I think that's just everything I try to give to my kids.
And you are such a good mom too, which makes me have so much respect for you, because when you didn't have that foundation yourself, but yet you're such a good mom to your kids, that just says so much about you. I wish every parent would know, and this is not coming from some expert, obviously, that it matters what you say to your kids.
Oh, yeah.
It certainly matters if you're hitting them or not, which shouldn't be happening at all, but it matters what you say to them. It matters even what we say to ourselves, but especially these vulnerable little kids who rely on their parents to know their self-worth. And so even when we're upset, sometimes I'll just try to go in another room, take a breather for a second. Yeah. But it matters. They need to hear that they're loved. They need to hear that they're incredible.
Well, they're not going to be perfect. They're not going to do things the way you want them to do it.
Well, we're not perfect as adults.
No, not at all. And I think that parents envision this life for their kids and try to direct them there, but some parents just get it wrong. They are forceful. They make their kids feel like they're not worth anything unless they do what their parents tell them to do. When really kids should have the freedom to figure things out on their own and have the support and love of their family.
Guidance from parents, loving guidance.
Yeah.
Rebecca, thank you so much for sharing this with us. I know that was a really, really hard thing to talk about. And it was hard for me to even hear. I can't imagine talking about it. Yeah. But if there's any takeaway that we can have from this and how to help someone who's facing that trauma from their childhood, what would you say? What's the best thing to do today?
I think for me, it would have been to just have the courage to just never give up, because I think sometimes when we're having a hard time, we think that someone else will solve our problems, but really it's all you. And it may be the loneliest place to be, but you can have your own back and you can be your own best friend. And sometimes just that is enough. It's enough to get you to the next day. It's enough to sit there on your hard days and think about all the things you're grateful for, even if it's just one thing you can list. But you need to learn to be your own best friend. You need to believe in yourself. Believe that you can find things to help you. If that's therapy, you can find beautiful friendships out there, even if you don't have them now. I never thought I'd find someone like Dan who truly, truly loves me. It makes me emotional, but it's like he loves me no matter what. And I never believed a love like that was out there for me. So
there's hope.
Yeah, there's hope.
Wow. Always. Oh, yeah. I love that. Thank you so much. And yes, Dan is awesome. And so great. Are you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored.
You're so welcome.